Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why it keeps doing that, but it's like every 3 hours or so it's been doing it. It'll go offline like that for about 5 minutes, and then it will come back on.
Maybe the internet's real busy or something.
No, they've been doing a lot of work in our neighborhood, I think,
Oh, okay.
and it's just been causing issues. So, okay, well, let's go back to where we were. All right, we're back. We lost. I lost my internet connection for a couple of minutes. We've been having some problems with internet at my house for the last day or two, where it will just all of a sudden the internet will just drop out, and it's not something happening inside my house because when we lose it, every computer in my house loses it. So I think it's happening something in the neighborhood. They're doing some construction, and a few weeks ago, somebody in our neighborhood was doing some digging and they cut an internet line. It affected like half the neighborhood. Didn't affect me, but it affected half the neighborhood. And then they had to come in and do some repairs. And ever since then, I've been seeing Time Warner Cup or trucks in the neighborhood quite a bit, just doing various upgrades and repairs. So hopefully we won't have any further issues the rest of the week or the
Yeah.
rest of the podcast. All right, so we were talking about the Capitals and that big hit, and I
And
don't know
Tom
how
Wilson. Yeah.
I don't know how much there is to say, much more there is to say, but the NHL is basically trying to get those dangerous hits out of the game, and I think they're doing a good job. And in relation to that, if you didn't see that story on Paul Correa, you should see that story. It's a pretty good story. I put it out on my personal Facebook page, so if you're following me on Facebook, you should be able to get a link to that video. All right, let's move on to the next story. Forward Eric Cole announced his retirement from the NHL last Wednesday. Eric Cole, who hasn't played in the NHL since 2014-15 season, signed a one-day contract to retire with the Carolina Hurricanes. Following the announcement, Carolina Hurricanes president Don Waddell named Cole team ambassador. Cole sustained a spinal contusion on March 24th of 2015, playing for the Red Wings against the Coyotes. That was his final game. I spent my first summer when I got back here from Detroit trying to prove doctors wrong. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to this time around, the 38-year-old said. It wasn't the first time in my career I've been told to retire. For the first year, I sulked a little too much about it. I was a little lost and frustrated about not being able to play, but eventually I started getting on the ice with my son and his hockey team, and I started finding more important things to do. Cole had 363 points in 557 games in 9 seasons with the Hurricanes. He scored 59 points in 60 games in their 2005-2006 Stanley Cup championship year and was a big part of that team, of course. He finished his NHL career with 532 points in 892 games in 13 seasons for the Canes, the Oilers, the Canadiens, Stars, and Red Wings. Cole said he and the Hurricanes general manager Ron Francis discussed him returning to play for Carolina, but it did not work out. We had talked pretty openly about the fact that it was pretty disappointing to me, how I really wanted to come back here and do some one-year contracts as long as it worked for me and them. Cole said, I wanted to help out and teach what I've learned from so many great veterans that I played with here when I was young. So he's come back home, and he's the latest example. Not to I don't want to sound like a Hurricanes homer or anything, but I am. I'm going to be a Hurricanes homer. He's the latest of a number of Hurricanes players who have played here, love the area. You can attest to it as I can that this part of North Carolina is a very nice area to live
Yes.
in. The weather's great. It never gets real cold like it does up in the north.
Right.
We still do have 4 seasons. You still occasionally get snow, but a couple days later it's gone, so you don't have to deal with it all winter long. Players find in general it's a great place to live. And one of the key things with living here, as opposed to living in, say, Toronto, is these players and their families can go out in public and not be badgered to death, and just be completely inundated with fans constantly bother them while they're out in public. Out here, because hockey is down the list a little bit in terms of popularity in this area, the NHL players can go out in public and they can, they can go to restaurants, they can go, out in public and generally not be bothered.
Yeah.
So that's one perk of living here. So some players like that, some players don't. Some players like being the center of attention. But there's a number of players who have played here and either left and go and plays elsewhere or retired while they were here and ended up staying here. You've got, Eric Cole's the latest. You've got Rod Brindamore, who's still in the area. Sergei Samsonov lives in the area. He's working for the team as well. You've got Glenn Wesley. You've got, a whole number of players.
Justin Williams just came back.
Yep, because he loved it here the first time he was here. So, so you see that, it's just a testament to the area. It's a nice area to live. It's a rapidly growing market in terms of population, which means a lot of the neighborhoods are new. They're nice. They're everything's nice and new and fresh and clean and it's
good restaurants, Wayne.
Lots of good restaurants.
You're on your way to the game. The good restaurants are coming here from all over.
Yep.
It's kind of exciting, actually.
Yep. Great food trucks.
Yeah, great food trucks. They're on their way. Yeah, we're North Carolina's starting to get them. I won't go into detail on that, but maybe a later podcast we'll talk about a food truck that I really like. So.
Yep.
But,
hey, I got my lobster roll when I went to Cane's Fan Fest.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I went to.
You didn't tell me that.
Oh yeah, Maine. What was it? I can't remember the name of it. There was a food truck there that does Maine lobster, and I went there, and it was expensive, but it was good. Had the Maine lobster roll. Brothers Maine Lobster Company, I think is the name. It's actually a chain. There's food trucks. They probably got a dozen food trucks or dozen. What you want to call it, locations around the country. They're in about a dozen or so cities around the country. They're in Vegas, they're out west in California, they're here in North Carolina. They've got food trucks in the area. But it was good. I mean, it was nearly $20 for a lobster roll and a boat of tots, but it was good. And it was fresh lobster. It wasn't previously frozen. I can tell. I'm from Maine, so I can tell the difference.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I mean, it just goes to show you that the players like it here. Generally, if they come and stay for a while, they end up staying, keeping their family here. It's just easy place to live for sure.
Yeah.
And the city is easy place to get around. You go to L.A., Boston, New York, traffic's always a bugger to deal with. Philly, all the big cities on the East Coast, you're having constant dealing with traffic situations. Here, the everything's laid out nice, easy to get around. Very, very rarely do you run into traffic jams. And not to say they don't happen, but they don't happen as much nearly as here. Like, for example, when I travel up north to go see family and friends, I can't get through D.C. without running into some sort of traffic issue.
Yeah, that's a mess.
Every time.
The Beltway.
Every single time I go anywhere near D.C., there's always, no matter what time, I've tried driving through middle of night. I've tried through driving, on a Sunday, on a Saturday morning, early mornings, late nights, middle of the day when people should be at work, no matter what. There's always a traffic jam somewhere in the D.C. area, and I just can't get through it without that. So here you don't have that problem.
No.
So anyway, all right, enough touting our area. All right, that's it for stories, unless you had any. Before we move on to team previews.
You got the major ones. There's one other one we'll talk about a little later, but
okay. All right, let's move on to our season previews then.
Yes.
And this week we have to talk about the 8 teams that make up the Atlantic Division. And, of course, we do them in alphabetical order. So the first team we need to talk about this week is the Boston Bruins.
We finally land on the Boston Bruins, and that is a good thing to talk about.
Yeah, and as I pull up their page on my trusty Hockey News yearbook, of course, the Boston Bruins finished last year 44, 31, and 7 with 95 points, which is almost identical to the previous seasons before. They had 93 the year before that, 96 the year before that. Well, the difference last year is they made the playoffs, barely, but they made it. And the 2 seasons prior to that, they missed the playoffs. As far as players coming and going, you have players leaving. You have Colin Miller. Of course, he got pulled by the Vegas Golden Knights in the expansion draft. Dominic Moore and Joe Morrow are all gone. Coming in, really, there's only one name that has been added to the Bruins out of free agency, and that is defenseman Paul Postma.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else is coming back from last year. Now, there's still going to be a lot of new faces in Boston that people haven't seen before in Bruins jerseys, but they're all guys that are being developed from within. Boston's in a bit of a youth movement right now. It's a team in transition at this point. Is probably the best way to put it. There's a lot of players coming up through their system. They've had a lot of high-end draft picks over the last couple of years. Just a couple of years ago, 2015 draft, they had 3 picks in the first round. They were all right in a row. It was like 13, 14, 15. I think that's what it was, 13, 14, 15. And some of those players are starting to develop now. You've got Anders Bjork. You've got Jake DeBrusk. You've got Jakob Forsbacka Carlson, all expected to make the team this year. Of course, David Pastrnak is now signed, so he'll be back. Zach Senyshyn is another name that is probably going to be a guy that probably won't make the team right out of camp, but he'll get some playing time in the NHL. Noel Acciari played a lot last year for the Bruins. Austin Czarnik played a lot last year for the Bruins. Both those guys are going to see time in Boston as well as Providence this year. Back on defense, of course, you've got Krug, Chara. As far as new faces, you've got McAvoy, who will be officially a rookie this year, even though he made his NHL debut during the playoffs last year. He still hasn't officially played his first NHL regular season game yet. You'll see him in the lineup. Of course, Brandon Carlo was a rookie last year. He'll have an expanded role this year with the Bruins. Jakub Zboril is down the list a little bit in terms of depth, but he's another young name that you're going to start seeing a little bit more of in Boston. So, and all of those players that I just named are all guys that have been developed from within. The Bruins have stayed away from signing big-name free agents like they did last year and a couple of years prior. Last year, they ended up getting David Backes, if you remember. They signed him as a free agent. Well, they didn't go out into the free agent market, and I didn't expect them to. With all the talk that was coming out of Boston, I expected Boston to just stand pat in terms of free agency, and I would have been surprised if they would have gone out and gotten a big-name guy out of free agency because they've got so many of these young players coming in. As far as their prospects are concerned, of course, McAvoy is listed as their number 1 prospect, and a lot of people that have seen him play this preseason are extremely impressed with his play, and everyone is saying, boy, this McAvoy kid, he's going to be a good one.
Yes, he is. You guys got a good one there. And I think Anders Bjork is going to be another good one.
Yep. They signed him out of the University of Notre Dame. He had a big NCAA tournament. He basically carried that team. They didn't win the NCAA title, but he carried that team about as far as he could before they finally lost in the NCAA tournament. But he has signed with the Bruins. But Zach Senyshyn, Forsbacka Carlson, Ryan Lindgren is a team that is a player I haven't mentioned yet. He won't be on the team this year, but he's a couple of years out. He's pretty high on the Bruins list in terms of prospects. So as far as how I expect the Bruins to do, the experts are all, the so-called experts, all the people in the press are saying nobody has given the Bruins a chance of making the playoffs this year. And I'm kind of in that camp. I think you're going to see some growing pains with this team. They're not going to be terrible. You know, you're not going to see a 75-point season from this team. They'll probably be in the low to mid 90s in terms of points in the standings. But I think we're looking at a 9, 10, 11 place finish for the Bruins this year. That's just my gut feeling. Now, but I'm still excited about this team because of what will happen in the years to come with these players.
God, I got them finishing third, Wayne. That's my predicted finish for them. And I think that they're a solid playoff team.
I hope you're right.
I think they're in the top 8 this year versus last year where I kept telling you they're going to get in. They're going to get in. I think this year they take a step up on that, and they're in the top 8 teams in the Eastern Conference. My reasons, I think the young talent is very exciting and intriguing, and I think they like playing for this new coach Cassidy. I just get the feeling that to a man, the Bruins enjoy playing for him, and he came in and gave him a good spark. And of course, he's been in there. He's come from Providence, right? He's a Providence.
Yeah, he was.
Coach.
He was a Providence head coach. Yeah,
he knows their system very well, and they seem to really like to play for him. Seems that way, anyways. And also, Wayne, I think what's critical, and I could be wrong that they'll finish third and finish further down the list, their matchups against Tampa Bay, Toronto, and Montreal are critical. And you could probably even throw in Ottawa. The interdivision matchups against their opponents, more so than maybe any other team in the Atlantic Division, is going to be critical, don't you think? Because I think as a young team, they have to learn the importance of beating the guys that are scrapping and clawing with you to get in the playoffs.
And the Bruins have struggled in that department in the recent years, particularly against Montreal. They always seem, I don't know if in Montreal, because of the rivalry, is getting in their heads or what, but and Ottawa has kind of, last year, they really struggled against Ottawa. I don't think they beat them at all in the regular season. They got their first win against them in the playoffs last year. So, yeah, if you can't beat the Montreals, Torontos, and Toronto because of their youth and rise in the standings, they're going to be more difficult to beat here too. If you can't beat your Torontos, Montreals, Ottawas, not to mention Buffalo, I mean any of those teams, you're right. If they continue to struggle in the interdivision, they're going to be buried in that division. But if they can do well against those division rivals, there is a shot there. I mean. Yeah, I don't have them picking to make the playoffs, but I don't have them that far out.
Right.
If they finish with 90, 91, 92 points, it just takes a hot streak against these interdivision rivals, and they're in the playoffs. They're not that far out.
Yep. That's how I looked at it. Is I think they're going to play better this year against Ottawa. I think they're and a lot of times I'm a Rangers through and through. I'm looking at the schedule and I'm saying, okay, well, if we can split with this team and, go 3-1 against this team, and we do this against this, I'm thinking that as I'm looking at the schedule, what's going on, and I'm doing it this year with Boston, and I'm thinking, hey, you look at Montreal on paper, Wayne, they lost a lot. Montreal lost a lot. Do I think they'll make the playoffs? I think they're going to be close. But they lost a big chunk. And I think Boston may take a step up and Montreal may take a step back. But that's just it's nothing more than, throwing horseshoes. I have no clue. Yeah. But that's my gut feeling. That's what I seem to just sense from this this youth movement that they have going on. So. Yeah,
the Atlantic Division is clearly weaker than the Metro overall, top to bottom. But I see a logjam here in the Atlantic, and our predictions are probably not even going to be close to what we're actually going to see. But anyway, that's where we stand with the Bruins. Anything else you want to add with
Boston? Watch out, Wayne. I was right last year. I might be right again this year with the Bruins.
The only other thing I'd add is we haven't talked about the goaltending situation. Of course, Tuukka Rask is your clear number one, but there's a lot of talk about the number two position. With essentially, it's centering around Hudobin and Subban. Now, Subban, this is the first year where he has to clear waivers in order to go down to Providence.
Okay.
And being a former first round draft pick, that's going to draw some attention from around the league. So the Bruins have to make a choice here, and they haven't made it yet. Still, all three goalies are up with the big club. One of them is going to have to go down to Providence at the end of the preseason. Is it going to be Hudobin or is it going to be Subban? You could make a case for that Boston may want to keep Subban around in Boston for a little while. He has played well in the preseason. He's had a few outings where he's played really well. So they may decide to keep him around for a little while to hopefully not, lose him to waivers. But Hudobin, chances are, will clear waivers because there hasn't been a whole lot of interest in him outside of Boston. So, so that will be one interesting to see here in the next week or two what the Bruins decide to do with their goaltending situation. And they may, for the first week, just keep all three in Boston and give them all a start or two, and see where they, because Subban hasn't proven that he can handle NHL, like full-fledged NHL. Every time they've brought him up, he's struggled. But he's played well in the preseason. Can he carry that over to the regular season? That remains to be seen. All right, let's move on to Buffalo. They finished. They finished 33, 37, and 12 last year for a total of 78 points, finishing well out of the playoff picture. As far as players coming in and going, they lost this year Tyler Ennis, Dmitry Kulikov, Marcus Foligno, Anders Nielsen, and Derek Grant. Players coming in, they have Benoit Pouliot, Jakob Josefsson, Jason Pominville, Marco Scandella, Nathan Beaulieu, Victor Antipin, and backup goalie Chad Johnson. I see the Buffalo Sabres as a team that I think is going to struggle again this year. You really haven't made a lot of big changes here with the changes they've made. The core of this group is still centered around Jack Eichel. And the big question with him is, can he stay healthy for a full season? He's had some injury issues here to start off his career. But you've got Jack Eichel, you've got Evander Kane, you've got Kyle Oposo, Ryan O'Reilly, Sam Reinhart, Matt Molson, Johan Larsson are the forwards up front. Back on D, Rasmus Ristolainen, Josh Georges, Zach Bogosian, and Justin Falk, not the Carolina Justin Falk, the other one.
Right.
Are back on D, and of course Robin Lehner is the number one goalie at the moment in Buffalo. I just don't see that these young players. Of course, I'm expecting a big year from Jack Eichel at this point. This is what, his third or fourth year?
I think it's his third year.
Third year.
Did they sign him to the money contract, Wayne? I'm trying to remember.
No, he is entering his last year of his entry level contract.
Yep.
And there's been a lot of talk in the offseason that Buffalo is trying to get him an extension so that they don't have to go into the restricted free agent part of the dealings with him. They can sign him now to that extension, so he'll finish his third year and then start his first big boy contract starting next season. So they are eligible to sign him, but they have yet to do it. And now it looks like if the season starts, they're not going to bother with it until the off season. They don't want it. Jack himself has come out and said he doesn't want contract negotiations to be a distraction, and he's going to put it aside. If it doesn't happen before the season starts, it's not going to happen till next summer.
Yep.
But he'll ultimately end up back in Buffalo because he'll be a restricted free agent and all that. So, but he obviously is the big future of that team, but I just don't think they've surrounded him with enough pieces to be able to make a serious run at a playoff spot. I don't know if
100% agree with what you just said. I think that's the reason why Buffalo is not going to make the playoffs unless something happens, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I, you know, uh, they, and it may be that the players didn't like playing. You hear scuttlebutt that they didn't like playing for Dan Bilesma, but they just brought in a new coach and a new GM,
Yeah.
and they've been doing that a lot. It's like a revolving door in Buffalo. And so I think it just takes time for something like that. When you do that's major changes, and now the players got to get used to a new coach, new assistant coaches, a new system of how to run the team, and you sputter and this isn't going right. We got to tweak this and change this, and I just they're not as deep a team to look at them and say, oh well, they'll get it on the fly, and they'll pick it up and they're going to really steamroll through the Atlantic this year. I think they're going to really have struggles. And I agree with what you said. The players just aren't there for an 82 game schedule.
Yeah. They do have some prospects in their system. Alex Nylander is a right winger, but he's their Hockey News, or at least according to the Hockey News, he's a couple of seasons away. Casey Middlestat has just left high school and is just starting his career at the University of Minnesota. But they've got high hopes on him for the future. Question is, how long will he stay there? Minnesota has a long history of players leaving early. Phil Kessel's one, that first comes to mind, who didn't stay his full 4 years there. But I would expect Middlestat at least to do 2 years at Minnesota before he decides to turn pro. So he's a couple of years away. Rasmus Asplund is another winger that they are actually a center that they've got high hopes on, but he's going to be a couple of years away. Brendan Gooley is the first or the highest prospect that they have on their list that is expected to make the team this year. He's a defenseman. And then in terms of goaltenders, their best prospect is Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who they just drafted this summer. And Hockey News is saying he's a good 5 years away before he'll be ready. And, of course, as you know, goalies do take a little bit longer to develop for the most part. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, goalies do take a while to develop into good, strong number one. And that is one of the weaknesses I see with Buffalo is I don't see Robin Lehner as a pure number one, bona fide number one NHL goaltender, but he's the best they've got right now. So, all right, let's take a look at the Detroit Red Wings. They finished last year 33, 36, and 13 with 79 points. They were in the playoff hunt, but fell late in the season, fell way out of it at the end. As far as players coming and going, they didn't lose anybody notable, but they did add Trevor Daley and Luke Witkowski, both defensemen. They're pretty much the Detroit Red Wings I see as a rebuilding team, but they have a major problem. They're a rebuilding team that is right tight up against the salary cap. So they're in a bit of a cap hell right now. They've got a number of players that bottom line is this team is just not good enough to make the playoffs, but they can't do anything about it because they have no cap space to do anything about it. So
Right.
they've got a lot of nice pieces. I think they're in better shape than, say, a team like Buffalo in the long run. But I just don't think they have the right pieces in place to make a serious playoff run this season.
Right.
They do have Dylan Larkin, Henrik Zetterberg, Anthony Mantha, Thomas Tatar, Franz Nielsen, Gustav Nyquist. Two decent but not great top six lines. And, of course, you got the Athanasio situation that's hanging over their head. They have no cap space to sign him, and he wants way more than what they have available in their cap. They also have Riley Sheehan, Justin Abelkader, Darren Helm, Luke Glendening, Tyler Bertuzzi. So there's a lot of names there. Helm, Abelkader, Nielsen, Zetterberg, a lot of aging players.
Yeah.
And they need to get these guys cleared out because they're taking up a ton of space. Back on D, they got Denny DeKaiser, Mike Green, Trevor Daley, Nicholas Cronwall, Xavier Willett, Nick Jensen, Jonathan Erickson. So, again, a lot of age there, a lot of salary tied up there that they need to get rid of. And of course, it continues with their goaltending. Jimmy Howard and Peter Mrazek are both high-paid goaltenders, and they really do need to get rid of one of them to clear some cap space. So yeah, Detroit is in a rough spot right now. Now, the good thing with them, they got a brand new arena.
Yeah.
That we've both watched a game there. The Bruins played them a couple of nights ago, and I was very impressed with the arena. I would love to make a trip to go see it personally.
Beautiful place, man. Oh,
gorgeous new arena.
Did you see that where they have the actual letters from the old Olympia Stadium?
Yes.
This goes back before the Joe Louis Arena.
Yep.
And they said it was in somebody's closet, locked away somewhere for years. And they found these letters. They recreated the O because the guy lost the O. But the rest of the letters are the actual letters from the original Olympia Stadium.
Yep.
And they lit them up inside, and put them on the wall.
In the concourse, yeah.
Really something, the replay, the scattering of the video, and then it comes together and shows, the ice and some replay, and it's really, really well done.
What I was really impressed with is they've created that outdoor space. I mean, that is created purely for playoff hockey right there. They have a big outdoor space that is free to go to, even on game nights. They have a big, huge, I think I saw it was like 12 by 22 foot, 12 foot by 22 foot screen permanently installed outside that essentially broadcasts whatever they're broadcasting on the scoreboard inside. The scoreboard, which is phenomenal, by the way.
Yep. The largest scoreboard in the NHL. Yep. I believe they said that.
I think they said the largest indoor scoreboard, in for an indoor arena. Anyway, they have the big screen there, so you can go. If you don't have a ticket to the game, you can go be part of the pregame, tailgate, whatever you want to call it, festivities, and watch the game on that big screen right outside the arena. So, like, if that's not made for playoff hockey, I don't know what is.
That is going to be for years a great place to go. I really second. And those guys, I forget the Detroit announcers. You'll have to forgive me. We have quite a few listeners in Detroit. We're blessed, but I forget the name of the gentleman that did the game, but it was your announcers. And these ladies brought in the Little Caesars pizza.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they had quick response. The two $5 pizzas and the pan pizza and all that. That was pretty neat how they did that, Yep. But it was exciting to watch.
So yeah, about the best thing you got going on in Detroit this year is the arena is going to be the show, because the product on the ice is probably not going to be very good.
Yeah. I picked them to finish 6th, Wayne. And I've learned never to count out Detroit. Just never count them out. They have ways of that original 6 power rising up in them, and they seem to. But I don't think they're going to make. There's no doubt they're retooling, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. But they might. Jimmy Howard can stand on his head for extended periods of time. I've seen him do it.
Yep.
And if he's playing good, and somebody like Thomas Tatar or Dylan Larkin gets hot, they can win some games and make a go of it, 80, 85, 90 points maybe.
Yep.
So.
No, I agree with you. I think they're not going to be a bottom feeding team for sure, but they are going to be tough to play against, but I just don't think there's enough talent there to take them over the hump into